We are live. Tim Crossland, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Anyone that doesn't know, you're my dad, so that was pretty cool. I thought that'd be fun to do.
His padre.
Hey,
yes, sir.
So we were in the. I just want to wrap up talking about Frankie Yankovic. Right before we were live, we were in the waiting room talking about. So Weird Al Yankovic must have taken his name from Frank Yankovic, the polka star.
Well, it's entirely possible that Yankovic is his last name.
And he played polka. That's a big coincidence.
Frankie did. I'm talking about.
Yeah, but so does Weird Al.
At Weird Al, yeah. I mean, Yankovic's a name. It's a Polish name, or a name.
I feel like we could talk about a million things. But the first thing I wanted to ask you was your perception on. You were born in 1949. So your perception on the evolution of technology. We were just talking about records and transitioning to the digital age. But like, what was memorially for you when you remember life and stuff? What was the most transformative technologies?
That's a good question. Like we were saying, I was into the LPs there as a teenager and stuff, but they had 8-track tapes. Did you ever hear of 8-track tapes? They're like, boxes that you shove into this. That was one thing. I'd have to say it was probably CDs. That was really, I mean, like we were saying earlier, it's just, the sound is crystalline, it's just so, impeccable. It loses something in the translation, but you listen to electronic music so often, you don't really think about it unless you're, I don't know, one of these people that are like really tuned into it.
Right, audio engineers and stuff.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But so that's musically the CD. I mean, the CD altered reality for me. I could go running and once post CD skipping, like digital iPod, where I could have a 10,000 songs on and it didn't skip anymore.
Right.
But what about the internet? Like, did the internet blow your fucking mind? Like, what happened when that?
Blowing my fucking mind right now, pal.
Dude, like we had to pay CNN $30,000 for a 20-minute spot to talk shit 25 years ago.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I joke. I have traditionally in the past joked offhandedly about the internet being the Antichrist, and I'm not so sure I'm wrong now, and I'm being glib there. Okay. But what I'm saying is, it's like, well, think about it. I mean, think about all the strides in, for example, medication, that they've, I mean, like they've done cancer, let's call them cures, that couldn't have been possible without computers. Right. But then, I mean, you got the whole thing just laid bare before your eyes, the world, you got all the good stuff, you got all the bad stuff. The lies can permeate a culture, in a matter of minutes, and that, I mean, me, I've got a strong belief in an afterlife, and you start thinking about the end times. I mentioned it to your brother one day, and he goes, people have been predicting that for the last couple thousand years, and I was like, yeah, that's entirely true. Longer, I would imagine, but that kind of it doesn't worry me. I don't stay up nights thinking about it. But it's just the internet. You know what? I've been telling people freely, and I do like to talk to folks when I'm out and about. I've been talking to people freely about the fact that I was a much bigger fan of the 20th century than I am the 21st. The 21st just has way too many little twists and turns and like I say, the lies that permeate our world, is it's jaw dropping. The 20th century was, we had our problems. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a little thing like the Vietnam War, which lasted for 14 years, and the riots and, I mean, just, you can't go to this college because you're black, but it's just like, some part of me harkens back to the 20th century. I kind of miss it in a lot of ways, mostly because it's the way stuff moves so fast, so fast and so, I don't know, so profoundly, just in a day's time.
Yeah, that is how information can move through a culture. Like you said, minutes, and that's literal. The 21st century, like, not to over romanticize the Great War, the World War I, and they called it, they didn't call it World War I. It was the Great
No, it
20
was the war
million
to end
dead.
all wars. It was
Yeah.
the war to end all wars.
Because after that, they're like, we will never have this kind of war again. It can never happen again.
Yeah,
and then World War II, even worse than, well, arguably, technically the machines were bigger and stronger. The bombs were bigger. More people died. I think more people died.
Oh, more people died.
Second. And the horror. But, and we haven't experienced that in the 21st century, thank God. But at the same time, the digital creep, like you were calling the internet the Antichrist, and there might be something to that. They say, like, maybe we're not in the end times. They've always, like you said, generation after generation, there's doomsayers, but we may be in the apocalypse. And that word is Greek. It means, apo means to take away, and calypse is the veil. And it's as if we have taken away the veil with the internet, and we're seeing, also you mentioned, the good and the bad all at once, this data flux, but then there's the manipulation involved. So, like, maybe we're not in the apocalypse because maybe there is still a veil that we don't see because it's altering, the algorithm is sort of a veil of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if this internet is developing sentience with the advent of AI, that it really will become a sentient creature that will take on the role of the Antichrist.
I'm a little concerned. I'm following your every word. I'm hip to what you're signifying. I'm hearing you. Here's the thing. I'm going to tell you, as far as, what was one of the last things you were talking about? Because you triggered me when you said just that. What was your little spiel about there? What were you going through?
The sentience of artificial intelligence may become
AI. Yeah. I hear people on TV, and they're like singing the praises of AI and what a world it will be, when AI, and it's just like, I don't see it, myself. I mean, obviously we've agreed, or can agree, I would think, that if a technology can be abused, it will be abused. One of the things they're trying to pass in this bill that the Republicans are just put through the House of Representatives, one of the little things they snuck in on page who knows what, right? Said states wouldn't be allowed to interfere or involve themselves in the production of AI for 10 years. They want to give 10 years time before the states can actually put any brakes on AI in their own state, right? So, I mean, a lot of stuff can happen in a day or two or three or a week, Think about 10 years time, It'll be like Terminator 2 by the time 10 years is up. I don't know. That's just me lashing out.
Well, like law, when you try and I'm concerned about how, okay, so we tell the AI, you can't do this, AI, it's illegal for you. The AI will be like, actually, structurally, I can, so I will. Your laws mean nothing. The only law of machine is what can it and can it not do. And so it's built into the software's capability is the law. That's the law. Is like, how is it built? That's the law.
Yeah. Well, the law gets skirted every day, doesn't it? I'm just saying, I don't trust it. I don't trust the concept of AI from square one, man.
So what is, okay, sorry to interrupt. Were you going to say another thing?
No, I was thinking while we were starting to talk about AI, though, that one commercial where the two old people are like looking at the little machine because they can't hear anymore, So, their grandson calls them and he's like, Grandma, I played baseball today, and his cadence is such that there was never no kid sitting in front of a microphone. It's strictly AI in its formative years, and it's like, you were, now I think her voice was real, right? And she's going, oh, what position did you play? And he'd say, first base. And she'd say, your grandpa used to play first base. And I told your mother about 2 weeks into that commercial, this is my most hated commercial. And that's just an aside. Please go on.
Oh, man. Well, have you seen the VO3? It's VEO3. It's Google's new AI. They dropped it like 3 weeks ago.
Tell me about it.
You can put a prompt in. It's, I don't know, $10, $20 a month. I think for like 150 a month, you put a prompt in, you're like, you just say a guy walks into a bar, a bear comes in the window and attacks. Right. There's a gunfight. It will make a movie with actors speaking lines and that sometimes sound very real. You'll see newscasts that are fake. You'll start, and I saw a post yesterday like, dude, people's grandparents that don't know what AI is are about to be twisted by.
Oh yeah. I mean, think how that could be abused. It's just I know a teacher, and she was telling me, kids for like the last year or two have been using one of these sites. There's one that's real popular, I guess, amongst you youngsters, but she said, you can tell, at least now you can tell, when they would be supposed to write a paper, right? And they'd use AI to write the paper for them, right? And she said, it would leak through around the edges because you could hear the kids using turns of phrase or words that these kids had never used in their life, and it would, how it is. I mean, everybody's got their own shtick, their own spiel, and it's like, she said she could pick up on it, and she said, well, she was saying it was like a pain for her to have to go back and like, grab this kid by, the scruff of his neck and say, now look, it's obviously you used the computer to write this, blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, now, when this thing is in its infancy, I mean, you can figure it out. Those little pauses in the cadence that I was whining about, those will be long gone here, in short time.
Yeah.
Please go on.
Almost right. I think it already happened. Actually, in some instances, you still see instances of the uncanny valley where you're like, it doesn't look quite human. And then you'll see like a shark swimming through a street, a flooded street, and you're like, okay, maybe this is fake. But then dude,
no, that shit was real.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, are you really into talking about AI? Because I can take it or leave it. I would prefer to leave it. I was just thinking to myself, I was wondering, have you been playing music?
Yeah, I have. I'll say the last thing I'm thinking about AI.
Okay.
Is that, and then I'd love to talk more about music. ChatGPT, which it might be the program people were using.
That's the one the kids were using. ChatGPT.
Open AIs. And people have said, there's been reports to people that use it to do their thinking, because it's basically this intelligent machine that can do thinking for you. It doesn't have emotions, but it can do thinking for you.
Yep.
People that are using it to do their thinking, their thinking muscles start atrophying, their ability to think starts atrophying, and then they say they have a hard time thinking when they don't have the machine with them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like I used to memorize phone numbers, and now I don't really have anybody's. I have a few phone numbers. I still remember phone numbers from when I was 12, but I don't bother to memorize the new numbers. So if my machine dies, I don't know how to call people.
Long-term memory is the last to go.
There's other ways to contact people, like you can see their face on Instagram and send them a message. But what were you gonna say?
That's another issue I have, with people's face in the phone constantly. I mean, I was working with kids, right? And you'd see little kids come in and they'd be like, probably barely old enough to walk, and the whole time they're sitting there, staring at this little tiny screen, or, now it's this stuff, and it's like the human interaction, is just, I don't know. I mean, you don't see people out on the streets, I mean, we live in a decent neighborhood, you really hardly ever see people out on the streets, you never see kids out playing, I sound like an old motherfucker, don't I? That's because I am one.
You got that perspective of back in the 80s, 1980s, we would play at the park. I mean, I was a little kid then, but I remember before internet video gaming, the only way to play a game with anybody other than yourself was to find them and hang out with them. It was the only way, literally. You could maybe mail a piece of paper and get a mail back a week later, but that wasn't really gaming. And so we just played a board game a couple nights ago, like three of us, and that community aspect of hanging out, being in the same room, vibrating together, smelling each other, eating the same food together, like was a huge part of the 20th century. I mean, a huge part of human existence forever until internet. Right. And oh, bro, dude, okay. It is. I don't know how to rectify it. I don't even know if it's a problem. That it looks like a problem, but for all those people that were riding horse and buggies in the early 1900s, the automobile was a crazy problem. And they're like, how are we going to, the biggest problem of the day for people was like, there's too much horse poop. At the rate we're going, we're going to destroy our society because there's going to be too much horse poop. Then all of a sudden a new technology appeared, and it's the automobile, no more horse poop anywhere. And it's similar. AI might come and solve cancer. It might solve problems where it's like, people are starving.
I'm sure it will. On one end, it'll be solving cancer, and on the other end, it'll be, I don't know, convincing us that we should boil each other and eat them.
Yeah. Like, what does it want? What will it want? Will it want humans as slaves? Will it want humans to keep it going?
This is yeah. I'm going to tell you a thing or two about a thing or two. No, here's something that bothers me, and I don't know why it bothers me. Well, I know why it bothers me. And we were kind of like talking about the end times, and like, here's the thing. It's like, I got, I have a profound belief and a faith in a life after this one, and that, Jesus was the Son of God, that sort of thing, yeah, that sort of thing. But like if, and I'm not even sure, I've never really researched, and we were talking about the end times, and I've not really looked into the whole end time thing, but I'm thinking like, would that it were, right? Like all this stuff that's going on, like, like electing a narcissistic sociopath to become the most important person on the planet. Well, between him and Elon, but Elon's got his difficulties. That aside, I think, and I think about this more often than one might. I think to myself, maybe this is all part of the plan. Maybe we are on the way out. Maybe a society is about to fall apart, or maybe not about. Maybe it'll take 1,000 years to fall apart. But maybe this is all because I got a feeling. I got a feeling that well, I know that God's real. And I mean, I just that stuff that happened to me. Those things changed my life. I mean, they changed my life. They changed me. I mean, I used to think that there was a higher power, but now it's just like, it's a fact of my life. It's just, it hit me like a ton of bricks when it hit me, and consequently, when I think about stuff like, Trump or the internet or the this or the that, I like, part of me just has to say, well, that's the way she goes, but then, we've got such free will. We as human beings, have such free will. We can do real bad things, we could do real bad things. And then that's proven every day.
Yeah. The opium wars. Are you familiar with the opium wars of the Chinese? Basically the British brought opium in
yes, I know of the opium wars.
Yeah. In the 1840s, the Europeans decided we're going to start selling opium into China. They colonized the East. They took Hong Kong. They started selling, and then the Chinese revolted, and they're like, we don't want opium. It's destroying our people. We can't industrialize our brain drain. And so they fought a war, and the British dominated because they had better technology. And then, so 5 years later, the Chinese tried again. They're like, we don't want to sell opium in our country anymore. And the British and French came in and stomped them down. And they called it the century of humiliation from 1850 to 1950 until their communist revolution. They used this century of humiliation as the impetus for the communist takeover. It was the horror that the British had imposed on the Chinese. And now the Chinese are playing the long game and seeding fentanyl into the United States, reversing the course of the opium trade, basically attempting to dope up our citizens so that we go agrarian, we can't industrialize, and we become the serfs to the West, or to the Chinese. I think that's the plan. So naturally, a strong man is elected. In the United States, we've been overrun. Our borders are poisoned by fentanyl. It had been a blind eye been turned. I didn't even know about this until a year ago or 2 years ago. And so the natural human response is, oh God, I'm scared. Things look bad. Get me the largest, loudest guy I can to fix it as quickly as possible. I think that's the phenomenon that is going on right now.
Oh, I see. Well, okay. Well, I can see where 51% of the people believe that, although 51% shocked me when I found out that he actually had won that thing, because I was down my own rabbit hole. We've talked about that. I think, I was like thinking, oh no, there's no way, it's no way that they're going to elect a fella like this, a felon like this. And I just, your mom says I shouldn't laugh at my own jokes. That was more of a titter at my own joke. I didn't really laugh out loud. Anyway, that aside, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, pal. I just don't know what to tell you.
Well, it seems like it's not the end. I don't think humans are destroying themselves.
Yeah, you're right. Fentanyl is deadly, right? And you mentioned that, and I was thinking about that, and then I got sidetracked with my own witticism. But the whole thing is like, that sounds a little too pat somehow, that they're getting even for the opium wars. That sounds like a real good, whether it's true or not, it sounds like, because I know nothing about it, but it sounds like a good urban myth that would spread like wildfire on the internet, and that's likely where you picked it up. But
I just made it up.
Oh, you made it up. That's
I did.
Well,
I read all the.
You need to write that shit down immediately and get it out there so that we can convince a few people that I don't know.
Yep. I'll make noise about it Friday night.
Was the punchline opium's good for you? I was like,
I don't think so. I've taken methadone in the past. You ever have
methadone?
Methadone is
why the fuck would you take methadone?
This guy who was a recovering heroin addict was a friend of mine. I worked with him at one point, and he was like, he would come in from a clinic in the morning where he would get his methadone, and he put it in his water and would drink it. Go. And so we're 6 months went by or whatever, and he's like, you want to try it? And I was like, yeah. So I tried it, and I don't know if you've had opium before. It I mean, my body was blasted, like gravity took, but
Is
I was
that
using
right?
it. Yeah, I was using it to stretch. So like I could see where yoga comes from. Like I think that they would smoke opium on the beaches of India and do
Mhm.
yoga with the sun. They do these sun salutations as the sun rises. And I kind of felt that, but the addictiveness of it.
Yeah.
And it
You
wasn't,
know,
yeah,
I
it wasn't
didn't.
pure opium, I was gonna say,
I
but it was
mean,
still.
I've talked to a lot of people that had taken or were on methadone. And I never heard anybody describe it. I mean, I never asked anybody. Who, what's it like? But it sounds like, well, I mean, if you're replacing heroin, you have to have something pretty good to do that, right?
Yeah, I think the guy that was taking it to get off of heroin was like, well, it makes the pain hurt less. But for
Yeah.
me, it was like I felt fine. So it was like blast, like I was just pulled and I was my neck. I mean, I'm cracking in ways that had never cracked before. So
So do people get? I mean, did you feel like that's the sort of drug that a person could get addicted to?
yes, because the next day I think I was like, wow, I was still kind of in recovery from it. Then the next day after that, I saw him and I was like, hey, can I try that again? I didn't even think like I want that. It wasn't a feeling. It was just like, oh, this very
A
tiny,
need.
subtle, like I could go for a read a book. Oh yeah, I'd
Yeah.
like to see that movie.
Let's have a shot of methadone while we're at it.
And he said no. And he was like,
Oh
no.
well,
And I think he saved me from literally
good of him.
becoming addicted to methadone, literally because it was so powerful. And I don't know if they make that in a lab, if that's
Oh,
like
I'm sure.
lab
Yeah,
constructed.
I'm sure they make it in a lab. You'd have to start doing heroin just to kick the methadone.
Jeez, it was so powerful. And I don't
Yeah.
think that even holds. I've never taken fentanyl, but I imagine, I mean, I've heard that like what 1/100th of a gram, I don't know the exact number, can kill a human being, like an adult human being of that stuff,
Yeah,
of
yeah. It's
fentanyl.
supposed to be pretty potent.
And it's like just another aspect of the 21st century super machine age where we're building these bombs and explosives and medicines that are more powerful than a human can conceive. I mean, nuclear weapons were kind of the first iteration, like a nuclear bomb. Well, I guess the machine gun was a big one. And the nuclear, like bombs are kind of a big deal. I don't
Bombs
think
are a big deal.
before bombs, I don't know if humans truly grasp the devastating nature of something that kills everything in a vicinity, everything. Like it's not, it's the most, you can drop it in an area. Anyway, I'm tangenting into these technologies that we build that are more powerful than we conceive. And I wonder if fentanyl is like that, or the next evolution of, because I don't think the goal isn't, well, maybe the goal is to kill people. Like, why would you want to lace stuff with fentanyl? It doesn't make any sense other than if you want to kill the person that's taking it.
I mean, there's the aspect of passing it as something else and making lots of money off of it, I suppose. But I mean, but when I was a kid, if somebody handed you, and I grew up in the '60s, right, and somebody handed you a pill and go, here, take this. I mean, a lot of times, not me personally, but a lot of times people would be like, okay, without even asking what it was. But I mean, where'd you go? Where you would go to purchase that stuff? You were buying on the street, right? That's where you had to get it, was on the street. And like these days, buying something on the street, you could pop one or two of these things and end up dead.
Yeah,
I don't know.
white.
If I was a kid, I wouldn't be buying drugs.
I
No,
don't mess.
you'd have to steal your grandma's oxy or something.
I could handle like green, like weed, because it's a plant. I don't think it's laced with stuff, but
You know
at
what?
least it's
I
a
was at
plant
an
that I can
Eagles
look at.
concert. Jesus, I was at an Eagles concert back in the day, and it was at the Coliseum, which I think is a pretty horrible place. Was a pretty horrible place to see concerts, because it was either that or else the shoot. People were passing joints around, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure, taking a hit here, taking a hit of this one coming this way and stuff. And I smoked some stuff that was laced with, what was that stuff? The animal tranquilizer they used to use. Remember that back in the day? They used to, oh, I can't remember what it was, but it was, it fucked me up, okay, and it ruined the concert. I was like, is that me or are the acoustics in here an actual horror show, an audible horror show? But yeah.
What would they grind it up
Be
in
careful what you
powder?
smoke, kids. What's that?
Yeah, did they put powder on it or something?
Yeah, it was like a
Lace?
liquid. It was like a liquid.
Oh,
And for the life
wow.
of me, and the name of it escapes me now, but it was like, it was commonplace for people to smoke this stuff, just because it would like kick your ass.
I always wanted to be like, I am not going to be the guy that's like, kids today, you don't know how we had, but things have
And
changed.
if you treat yourself right and live long enough, you will be, because I never expected I'd be one of them guys, and I sure as fuck am.
Like you talk about the life before the internet. If you were around before the internet, and that's just my perspective because I'm 46. So like I was born in 79, right before the internet. I was prepped for it with video games. So I had my keyboard I was typing on. I looked at a lot of screens, TV screens. So I was ready for the experience. But the life before the internet, where you're going to the library and card catalogs, and if you didn't know something, you just didn't know. Maybe you could find it in an encyclopedia or ask somebody. That was it. There was no way to know other than that. You had to learn. You had to like seek out. And now this world of everything's available, well, hyperbolically, so many things are available. It's almost like overload. Like, where do I look? What do I learn? What am I supposed to figure out? So anyway, in that instance, I feel like I'm like one of those kids today, guys, because I don't blame kids, because I feel like the kids today might end up being the saviors of the species, the ones that are born with the internet in their hands, the ones that are born wired into the neural net that can control machines with their thoughts. Like, if you can't,
they've got that going for them.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you were talking about being a kid, and I was thinking like when you were little, and I was thinking like, let's see, what was I thinking? I was thinking about that first time you like, the first time you ever made a word. You were like only 8 months old when you started talking. We were at the mall one day. You don't mind if I tell an anecdote, do you?
Yeah,
we were at the mall one day, and you were like, you're probably 2.5, and we were walking past this dude coming from the other way, and he was morbidly obese, he was huge, and your voice was crystal clear by the age of 2, and you had a bit of a vocabulary, right? And you chirped up and said, "Daddy, why is that man so fat?" And the guy looked at me, and he kind of, and I went, kids, and I got one more that I'll tell, and then I won't tell anymore, okay? This is pretty good. This is like my podcast now. This is my podcast, okay? I told somebody said I should have a podcast, but I don't.
You should have a podcast.
No, hell yeah. No, but I don't have a podcast, so I'm going to hijack yours, okay? How about them apples, motherfucker? Okay, this is a good one. You know how my mom, Olga, would, she would bring us up, she'd say, anytime you guys got questions, anything you want to know, she says, you ask me and I'll tell you, don't be afraid to ask me anything. And I was like, I like that, so that's kind of how I did with you guys, right? Well, you're the oldest, and it was kind of our first go around. You were probably about maybe 6, probably about 6 or 7, probably about 6, maybe 5. It's immaterial. And we were sitting on the back porch, right? And your mother was standing at the back door. And you said to me, "Daddy, I understand that when a man and a lady want to have a baby, the egg comes from the lady and the sperm comes from the man." And you said, "What I don't get is how they get together." And so I said, "Well, Ian," I said, "here's how it works, The man takes his penis," and your mom's at the back door. She's going like, because I'm telling a 5-year-old about sex, right? And I said, the man takes his penis and he puts it in the lady's vagina, okay? And then this stuff comes out of his penis and it goes up and it swims up and it meets with the egg. And I says, the egg and the sperm get together and then, then it grows up and it grows up into a baby, And you said to me, "Gosh, that must tickle when you have to do it." And I said, "Yeah, it tickles quite a bit."
Yeah, I remember asking you if coming felt like as good as peeing, and you're like, "Oh, it feels better."
Yeah, but you were about 35 when you asked me that.
No, I was like 12. I think it was 12 or 13.
Okay,
I was trying to derive. One of the things I remember as a kid is a lot of you asking me what I thought about stuff, and I'm like, am I misremembering it? Am I just making this up? But no, I remember like sitting in the dining room floor, and you're like, Ian, or we'd be driving somewhere, and you'd be like, "What do you think of that billboard, Ian?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's purple, and it's like a rectangle," and you'd be like, "Ha ha," and you'd laugh, and like we just keep going. Like you learning what my perspective was seemed to entertain you, so I would be invigorated to think critically about things. Like, what do I think about all these things? And you would frequently ask me what I thought about, so like get me involved and get my mind active. That was a great parenting trait. I just have recently been thinking about it.
Yeah, we were pro thought. Yeah, you like to see your kids grow into the people they come to be. I'll tell you something. You know what? That's another thing too. When you guys were little, you all had like these little idiosyncrasies, as do we all. And but a lot of the things you were doing when you were little, or were thinking or saying when you were little, I mean, it just kind of your body grows and stuff, but you're still the same person. You know, you're still that same. And some of these things, is things that people do and things that people say. You know, it's just like they've been with us all our lives. You know, and you just don't. Like when I was having you guys, you know, you three boys, I was like thinking. I assumed that you'd all be little carbon copies of one another, you know, boom, 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 like I was cranking you out on a production line, which I suppose, in a sense, I suppose I was. But you know, you guys were all so different and so individual, you know, and I just loved that about, you know, having you guys to raise. You know, I tell people, you know, I says, you know, it's you know, Olga, your grandma, Olga, and you, who, you know, you would never call her grandma, you would only call her Olga. She always said, you know, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems, you know, and she hit that nail on the head, right? So I tell people, you know, I tell them, you know, that I tell them that having kids will change your life. And I go, and in some ways good, you know, which is kind of a joke, but kind of not a joke. But the fact of the matter is, with all the ups and downs, you know, and with all well, at least in our lives, you know, like you and your mom and the boys, you know, your brothers, you know, it's like no matter what, you know, I would never have done it any different way, you know. I mean, there was no way in hell I would have changed anything about any of that, you know. It's just because, like, it's just what an experience, you know. It really is, you know. And I feel pretty blessed, you know, to have a family like you guys, you know, or like any, you know. I just, I'm a family, man. That's important, you know. That's part of the trouble. It seems like family has become less important to a lot of folks.
Well, if they don't know what it is, that's part of the issue. I think, and a lot of it is the engagement of family. Like, do you eat together? Do you game together? Do you hang out together? Are you actually are you familiar with each other? Because that's literally the word family, familiar. Like, if you're unfamiliar with your parents, they're not really your family. Like, if you have biological parents somewhere that you don't know, your family's probably the people that you're familiar with that raised you from when you're little, you know. It's so important to do the work. It doesn't happen automatically. Same way.
The same thing, you know. People got their faces in their fucking phones all the time. You know, it's just like, you know, you see it all the time. You know, you have like a, you know, and not everybody. You know, it's an overgeneralization. You know, when I was working with people, you know, I you know, the parent would bring the kid in, you know, and I mean, you know, mom doing this, you know, the whole time, you know, or whatever. And that didn't happen with that kind of frequency. But the point is, like, you're at home, you take the kid and you want to go have a little me time, you know, you set the kid up in front of the TV, you know, or whatever it is, you know, or you put the computer in front, you know, and give him the little computer to play with, you know, give him his iPad. And that's kind of troubling societally, you know, because it's like, you know, the kids, you know, they don't have that kind of contact, you know, with the, you know, and most folks are well-meaning and loving and stuff, you know, but, you know, everybody's so busy, you know. I mean, running with mom and dad both working and shit like that. It's, you know, it ain't, you know, it ain't no picnic, you know. I was working with a gal and she had to go off. She had her baby and she was going to have, like, I think they gave her 6 weeks off, something like that, you know, with pay, I suppose. And, you know, whatever they call it, you know, for the maternity leave and stuff. And she came, you know, after a matter of, well, probably less than 4 months, or maybe right at 4 months, she came back to work, you know, and she was having a tough day, you know, because it was the first day that the baby had gone to daycare, you know. And I was like, man, handing your brand new baby off to daycare like that. And I was talking to another gal, and I was saying to her, I can't imagine how tough that must have been on that mother, you know, to have to, like, give her kid up, you know, to a virtual stranger. I mean, it happens every day, right? And go off to work. And the girl I was talking to, she goes, "That's just how we do it these days, Timmer." They calls me Timmer at work. What?
It's really freakish to let a little kid, like, what you expose the young brain to is so important. I think for the last 15 years, the conversation hasn't been about the internet, like the relative ease and use of the accessibility of the devices. But recently there's been a big movement, at least in my circle of friends, that we talk about, like, just don't let your kid even know what that is. If they're screaming for their phone, why do they know what a phone is? And it's tough as you're the adult. I work on the internet. Like, if I got kids, they're going to see me working. I can't, like, hide. It's going to be tough to keep them away from the digital services. But
It would probably be good for the kid, but it'll be it. Does that leave them behind culturally?
Yes.
Is everybody else going off their nut? Because they watch the internet every day, and that's real life, right? Well, and then you got like a guy over here that'll feel like an Amishman or something, because he's just. But I think to a certain degree, to a certain age, yeah, you know what? They don't need to have that thing in their hand. They don't. I mean, that's a tough call, even though, when to issue a phone to a kid, you'd have to start small, you wouldn't want them, I wouldn't want to give them access to the internet until they were older. What do you think's a good age? What do you think's a good age to break somebody in on the internet?
Things change so
check this out. What?
Well, things change so fast. It's tough to say. Like you said, kids getting left behind. In a way, I want to make a cyber child that has full connectivity to the machine and can control society.
No, you don't want to do that.
In another way, I want to have an Amish kid. Well, sorry, anyone that's Amish that's listening, but someone that's agrarian. Yeah, but then what? It's like, what are we doing? Is humanity evolving into Homo sapien and then another techno sapien? Are we like Homo technos? Are we like really like the Neanderthal Homo sapien did 13,000 years ago? Are we creating this like robotic cybernetic human that's gonna then go to war? Like inevitably that would cause a war, and then the stronger of the species would dominate the other. And yeah, they'd be connected through neural nets. They'd see each other's view. They could hear. They'd all be connected and know ahead of time. They'd have all the information. They could see through walls and stuff. They'd easily be able to hunt out and slaughter just people living off the land, except unless a virus infiltrates their network and then they get all screwed up at once and the whole central system goes down. Like you could make a movie out of it, but in reality, I think the ones that evolve with the machine would take power. They would enslave the ones that won't use it, treat them as cattle, just use them for farming. And
saw that movie.
Okay. And so with having children, I'm like faced with the task of like, how do I raise this kid? Do I raise him fully in the machine? Do I pretend like the machine doesn't exist as all these other kids are getting hyper advanced with knowledge and learning? Because if I'd been able to learn on the internet as a kid and not have to go to school and wait for everyone else to figure it out, I would have learned probably 8 times faster. Like I would sit in class with my hand up in first grade and they'd be like, okay, what's the answer? I'd put my hand up because they already told us all the answers, and they'd call me, I'd tell them the answer. They'd be like, okay, great. Yeah. Okay. Next question. And I raised my hand again. She like looks past me at the rest of the class. Anyone? I'm like, me, I have my hand up. And then call me again. I give them the answer again. Yeah. Third time, just wouldn't even call on me. And I'm like, at the time, I just thought they wanted the answer so we could move on. Looking back, I realized they want to involve all the kids. But it was just learned. I mean, I would learn so much faster than everybody else for some reason. Not everybody, but most. You get one slow kid in a class in a public school, everyone has to wait for him basically. Or so if I'd had the luxury of learning quickly on the internet, I feel like I could have.
Nah, I don't think there's a reason cosmically. There's a reason why you don't learn 8 times faster. And to learn 8 times faster would probably be a mistake. Your little tiny brain, is growing, and there's probably enough folds in the gray matter to learn at 8 times the speed. I mean, hey, was that Musk that wanted to put that little computer thing into people's brains?
Yeah, the neural net. There's
the neural net. You mentioned that. I thought that was Musk. Yeah.
It's in a guy who has a spinal injury. He's a quadriplegic, but he's able to play video games with his net. So for those, I think it's a good use case for people that have spinal injuries at first.
Okay.
But what's concerning is if it's got read-write capability and your mind can be data.
Hook you to the mainframe.
Dude, you make a good point about not wanting to learn too fast because
you become part of the synchronicity. I'm sorry, what?
There's intelligence and wisdom, and like building up your intelligence too quickly without wisdom, you might just become a robot for the machine and do whatever you're told really efficiently and not know why. But over time, or
not care why. We could program you not to care why.
Right. And then you learn through experience about caring about like, why does this matter? Why is this important to society? Why are laws and what they are? Like, why does tradition exist? There's reasons that you figure out along the way that maybe you could implant into a young child's brain, but you might just twist it up. I don't know. I mean, it's just it's like it's an unknown. It's an unknown. Like, what do we do? Because no matter what, kids are going to be wired up to this neural net in the womb. They're going to be neural netted into the womb when they're like 3 months old. They're going to be these young, tiny little bodies, and they're going to be thinking and having thoughts and communicating with us.
Was this in the newspaper, or did
No,
you? This is
it's just
a worst case scenario we're
it's
talking
common
about here.
sense. It's path of least resistance. It's inevitability. The flow of water downhill. You know where it's going.
I do know water seeks its own level, right?
Yeah. I want to kind of shift gears unless you want to talk more about the neural net.
No, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. I've had my fill of neural net for the day.
You were one of the more reasons we were talking about doing a show lately is because you've had a sort of a spiritual awakening. Oh, I mean, through your life, you've always been kind of a spiritual dude. You didn't really talk about it a lot when we were younger. I wasn't. I guess we didn't really have a very spiritual family for the first 30 years of my existence. Only the last 10, 15 years, it's been like I particularly have felt very deeply impassioned by the energy of God, whatever you want to call it, spirituality. You know, using magnetic fields for communication, like the way they're interacting with your own body. There's more than what you see with your eyes. And so what happened with you? I know they called you Cosmo when you were in the fire department, which I always thought was,
they did.
I didn't think much of it, but why? Because you were out there?
No, it's because I was such a cosmic guy. I'd been out the night before with a couple of old friends, and one of them was a girl I used to work with, and we were joking about the cosmos. I was making little jokes about the cosmos. And like the next day, she came by the fire station to say hi on her way home from work because she was working right down the street from where I was. And I wasn't there. I was out on a call, but she left a little note knowing full well that the fireman would read the note, and it said, "Dear Tim, I wanted to thank you for a cosmic time last night," and she left it there for me, and at that point they gave me the new moniker of Cosmo. I became Cosmo, for those 28 years on the fire department, I was Cosmo.
Had you been talking to her about psychedelic perception?
No, we were just joking. We were drunk. We were drunk on beer, We were drunk on beer the way people used to like to get drunk. I guess they probably still get drunk on beer. I don't really drink beer or anything else for that matter.
What happened with you that cracked open your perception of the spiritual realm?
I got a couple of theories on this. I got one primary theory, okay? This is how it happened, I'm thinking. I told you I was sitting there having a glass of whiskey with your grandma, Olga, one night over there at 2241 Oakwood. And she said, you almost died when you had your tonsils out. Now, I was 50 years old, right? And I didn't know that I had almost died when I had my tonsils. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, they couldn't get the bleeding stopped. And they thought that they were going to lose you, Now, here's like where it gets, I don't know, remotely interesting, at least to me. I had a dream while I was under the anesthesia, which I can recall like it was yesterday. And they say you don't dream under anesthesia, but I had, and it was like a scrolling video game, and it was all in silhouette, okay? Like a dark blue background, and the figures and the ground were black, right? And I'm being chased, right? I'm being chased. And I always figured it was the doctor that was chasing me, And he's like running down this thing, and he's gaining on me, okay? And he's going, Tim, come back, Tim, come back. And I'm looking over my shoulders, I'm running, and I'm going, no, and I just keep going, right? Now, it could have been the doctor standing there in the OR going, oh, we got to get this kid back, we got to stop this bleeding, that could have actually been that, but it didn't seem to me that it was at the time. So I come to a real big, deep hole in this silhouette ground, right? And I leap over the other side of the hole and I make it, right? My pursuer, whoever it is, whether it's the doctor or death, he falls in the hole and I keep on going. Next thing I know, I wake up with a sore throat. And, they tell you can have all the ice cream you want. Well, it's a fucking joke, okay? Because your throat is so sore, you don't want nothing, including ice cream. But they all knew that going in. That's a whole nother story. But that aside, okay? Your cousin Natalie out west said her husband almost died when he was a kid. And consequently, he's always been a little bit perceptive, he gets a little premonitions sometimes, that sort of thing, and the same thing happens to me, the same thing happens to me. Since we're on that topic, I'll give you one quick aside, okay, and then we'll get back to the story about what happened to me, because this is fascinating. The other part, this other stuff is just, ha ha, Tim, you're so clever, you're such a raconteur, which I am. Make no mistake. I'm getting ready to go to the fire department one morning. I've been a fireman for like 8 or 9 years, right? I'm getting ready to go to the fire department. and I'm taking a shower, and I have this premonition of doom, and it just kind of sweeps over me like that. I mean, it's like that, and I'm going like, what the fuck is this? You know, because I don't get premonitions of doom. You know, it's not like something that happens to me ever. And I thought, should I not go to work today? You know, because I mean, it was strong. You know, and I thought, no, it doesn't feel like that. Well, fact of the matter is, if it's my time and I don't go to work, a meteorite will just come through the roof and you know, hit me in the head and kill me because it was my time. You know, so I thought I might as well go to work. You know, so I go to work. And I thought, man, I can't wait till I get there. The boys are going to love hearing this because we'd always have like, you know, we chatted up at lineup first thing in the morning. You know, we'd, you know, your lineup was supposed to be 10 minutes long. We'd usually take an hour because we're going to be there all 24 hours. I get there and it goes completely out of my head. I mean, I don't know what we talked about in the lineup, but I mean, that premonition, I might as well not have even had it. I suggested to a fellow, I was putting a cast on his kid when I was at work here not too long ago. And I said, I've thought about this for years. I don't know how that could have gone out of my head. You know, I mean, this is big news, right? This is big news. I had a premonition of doom this morning, you know. He said to me, the father, when I was at work here, he says, maybe if you had told the rest of the crew that you had had this premonition, he said that might have altered everybody's behavior and things could have turned out entirely differently. And I said, you know what? I've never thought about that, but that sounds like that's a real good possibility, you know, because you know me, I love a good story, right? Okay. So we get there and we check the gear out, we check the equipment out. We clean the building up a little bit, and then we have a little bit of coffee, and then we finish our morning up, and we're going to go have lunch. We used to have a pretty long lunch, you know, from noon till 1, no, from 11 to 12, whatever, hour and a half, 2 hours. And so 10 till 1, a fire call comes in, right? Fire call comes in, and it's for a house on this street that's like 3 blocks from the fire station. Windsor is the street. And we know we're going to be the first ones in, right? That means when we get there, Misty, he's going to get water. He's going to get that pump going. He's going to get water to us. Me and Mike, we're going to pull the attack line. Mike's on the nozzle. I'm right behind him. We're going to bust through the house. We're going to check the ground floor out. We're going to see if there's any life threat. And then we're going to go find the fire, right? So we're doing this shit, and the ground floor is clear. These houses were built after World War II. And they were called Heslops. There's lots of these houses for the returning GIs. There was asbestos shingles on the thing, right? That's how they build them. And somebody had tossed a cigarette in a mulch pile, and it had burned up the inside of these shingles, and it had gone right up through it. It was in the morning. You know, the guy's probably leaving for work when he threw his cigarette out. It's in the floors. It's in the second floor. The smoke. When we pulled up, the smoke was a dark brown, and that didn't register with me because I'm thinking about all this other stuff. What we got to do, you know. I'm the lieutenant. I'm calling the shots. You know, I got to figure out how we're going to take care of this problem, right? And so we get in there and we start making the second floor. We know the layout of the house. You know, it's going to be top of the stairs, bathroom, bedroom, right? We get up there and it looks worse to the left, right? I said, let's go left, right? We get, long story longer, right? We crawl into the middle of this room and we could not find the fire anywhere. And like, you know, until you can start putting water on it, it's just going to get worse, right? All of a sudden I look up over my head and I see fire and I thought, oh, good, there it is. Now we can hit it. But before I could say word one, right, it had burned through the roof and it instantly ignited these superheated toxic gases, which were floating all around us. And they went across the ceiling. It went like that. And then down every wall. And we were effectively surrounded on 5 sides by fire, right? And I'm going like, I went over your head, right? And he rolls on his back, you know, like a turtle, you know, and he knocks it back like that. And, you know, the steam puts that fire out almost instantaneously, right? And I said, are you burned? He said, I don't think so. Are you? And I go, no, but we are backing up, right? So we're down the stairs. We get outside the fucking house and I go, oh, I forgot to tell you. I had a premonition of doom this morning, you know. He's going, you're telling me now? Yeah. Just because I forgot. That's a pretty good story, huh?
Yeah, I wonder if there's like 3 things. There's like the butterfly effect. What if something had been different? Would it have changed? Right. Obviously, you can speculate all day. If you had said in the morning, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to work today because I got a premonition of doom. Who knows? Maybe someone else would have been in charge on that call and gotten killed.
Somebody else would have had to been in charge.
And so there's that aspect of, if you had taken the fear route of, I'm not going to go into work because I'm afraid because of this premonition, that could have caused the doom. You never know.
But you know, it's like all kind of cosmic. It's all like a string of did, didn't, could, couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't. And the next thing you know, we're surrounded on 5 sides by fire. And you know what? Happy ending. It worked out pretty good, you know?
There's something called ephaptic coupling. It's where neurons in the brain communicate with each other without chemical interaction. It's all through magnetic fields. So they've been able to calculate it in rats, and they think that's the phenomenon that is the cause of psychic communication, where like you'll think of someone and then they'll call you, or things like that.
Oh, yeah. That does happen. I mean, that happens with some frequency, but that could be coincidence too.
Literally some frequency, as if it is a frequency bouncing off the Schumann resonance in Earth's lower magnetic field and interfering with our neural pathways, which are also magnetic. Like literally it can happen with some frequency. What is the frequency? Frequency is probably oscillating. If two people are synergized on their frequent pattern, then maybe they're going to pull the same data, or they'll experience the same wave of emotion, whatever, however you define that doom feel, whatever that wave of, I mean, feeling is a generic way to describe it. How would you describe it?
Which part?
That feeling that came over you where you were like, whoa,
it was like a cloak of motherfucking darkness is what it was like. It was like somebody had like laid a cloak, an invisible cloak of dark. It was like just like that. It swept over me in like just a millisecond.
Was it possible?
Doom.
Was it possible that it was right as the guy threw the cigarette? Was it too early in the day?
No, I mean, it was like I was taking a shower. He was probably getting ready to go to work. That guy, you know.
And
that could have been happening at the same time.
Because fire is electromagnetic. So you might have felt a fire in flame.
I don't know about that. But you know what? That danger was somehow, it's entirely possible that danger could have been like it was cosmically transported to my brain.
And you know? I should say fire is not magnetic. I don't think that's the right word, but I think that there is, as far as I know, there's electromagnetic influences in fire. You know, it's electrons flying everywhere. Well, for sure, I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think these things are coincidences anymore. I mean,
that was just hardcore. I mean, that was just hardcore. It was like, I've never had a feeling like that before or since, you know, I'll tell you this, occasionally, like when I'll have like things happen, you know, I'll have like little premonitions about your mom and I were going up to Cleveland. We had to go up for a doctor's appointment up to the Cleveland Clinic, right? And I had an uneasy feeling, you know, just uneasy feeling. Just like I told her, man, can we cancel this? She go, no, for whatever reason, she had to go in and have something done and couldn't cancel this one, you know. And it was a bad snow, you know. And the farther north we got, the worse it got. All morning long, I just man, this feeling, man, it was like, And we came to a place where 77 and 480 split off like that. You couldn't tell, right? And I was like, I was going down 480 and I did not want to go down. I wanted to go up 77, right? And like all of a sudden I'm realizing what's happening and I start braking, you know, and like the car is not slowing down and it is not stopping. And we are going right toward a goddamn snowplow, and they're big on the turnpike, okay? And he's parked there. And he's like a wall of iron, man. And we're heading right towards that son of a bitch. And I am pumping the brakes and pumping the brakes and pumping the brakes. And finally, about 15 feet from his truck, we stopped, you know. And I looked over my shoulder. Probably shouldn't have done this part, but I was out of there. I was out of there and up the road, you know. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, I don't feel nervous anymore about going to Cleveland. I guess that must have been the one I was thinking of, you know.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. It could just be me. What they used to call it when I was a transcendental meditation type. They called it mood making. You know, when you're kind of like taking 1 and 1 and getting 2 out of it, or maybe 1 and 1 to get 2.5 out of it. You know?
Because it could be
really a 2.
It could be like the premonition itself could make you act in a way that causes something bad to happen. So, like, what is it? Is it?
Yeah, a girl that I worked with when I worked in the psych hospital. Here's another one. She killed herself. She stepped in front of a train and killed herself. And that night she spoke to me, you know, and I mean, you know, it's like, but I wasn't like adding all these things up as they were happening as time was going by, you know, but it was just like, I had this, I would have to say a gift, you know, I mean, it's a gift from God as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think Yeah, but I think it's deeply connected to your near-death experience. I'm starting to think that that's kind of opened
And
up your
that's just a
body.
theory on my part too. I got nothing to, I have nothing to base that on other than just, my cousin suggested it, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like that could be the truth. Uh, but there's no empirical evidence for that one. How about? Do you want to hear about the God one?
Well, usually, yeah.
This was
Which
like
one? I
this
mean,
was like the
yes.
major. This is like the major domo right here. This
Oh,
is the big
really?
one.
When did
Oh
this
yeah.
happen?
Well, it's been a couple years since the first part of it happened.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, I could give you the short version. Uh, God spoke to me in two visions. He didn't speak to me. God didn't show. God showed His greatness in two distinct visions to me, and I realized that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and that if you believe in that, you'll have eternal life. Now I'll tell you the long version. Okay. Okay. Um, I had a friend who was ill. He had leukemia, and he was not making it. He was going downhill, and he he's a nice fella, real smart guy. He said I was the funniest guy on the planet. Of course, he and I, he was highly respected in my book. But he was a great fella, and we'd get together 3 or 4 times a year, just because he was friends of friends, and always just had a really great time. And he was a man of the people. He really was. He he worked in city council, and he wanted to do he wanted to make people's lives better, and he just worked his whole life trying to do it. His father had been like that too. His father had been a union organizer with the post office, and he was like that, So I mean, the guy was just a really good human being, And your mom tells me one morning, she goes, "Rich probably isn't going to make it through the day." I said, "Oh, that's sad, but he's been suffering with this stuff, and probably better for his wife and for him both, and the family." I said, "When the suffering's over." And I said, "If you hear anything, let me know." So she calls me like an hour later, and she says, "Rich just passed." And I'm watching television, sitting in the family or sitting in the living room. And while she's telling me about Rich dying, I get this vision in front of me. It's like a movie screen. I can still see the television over here, watching the Morning Joe over there, and so I know I'm in the living room, but it's like an old time movie screen, like circa 1920s or something, and the proscenium, and there's like a bright light up in this corner. Oh, dark blue expanse, like is cerulean a color? I think it's dark blue. Little gold dots I took to be stars. A bright light up in this corner, and here comes a little gold dot down in this corner. So you got the bright light, you got the stars. And this little gold dot gets brighter and brighter as it gets higher and higher and arcs through the sky, and it joins with the bright light, and the vision fades away. And I said to Becky, "I think I just saw Rich's soul go to be with God. And she said, "Well, why would he show you something like that and not me?" And I said, "I have no idea. I don't know," because it was just like, this is baffling, right?
Probably all the weed you smoked. I don't know.
I
That's a little
don't
bit of
see. This is a little bit bigger than the weed
okay.
is the
Keep going.
problem. Okay,
Thanks.
okay, okay. So there was that. So what do you do with that kind of information? God just showed his show. I couldn't see him. I could see like the light emanating from him. That's how I took it. Uh, 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 God just showed you, yeah, he's real, and that there's a life after this one. And I just kind of like walked around thinking about it for a couple of days. Well, we had to have Kitty put down. Kitty had her little stroke, and your mom was going to go into the hospital and come home, and she couldn't be around this cat because the cat was, it just really wasn't making it. It was defecating under my bed and in my closet, and I didn't want to put her down. I'm just a soft heart. And I was trying to, oh, she'll get better, she'll get better. Well, she wasn't going to get better, And so finally, when mom was going to have to go have this procedure, I was like, I got to do it, So I called Michael over and said, "Hey, man, could you drive us? I'm just going to wrap her up in a blanket or a towel here to take her." He's like, "Okay." She'd been sleeping under my bed the last 2 weeks of her life. She had become afraid of everything and everybody overnight. She would just run from your mother, who she adored for over a decade. And she's sleeping under my bed, and I'm laying down there, and I'm trying to, hey, kitty, kitty, you know, blah, 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 you know. And then at night, she started coming up, and she'd sleep with me, and she'd grab my hand, and she'd wake me up, and I'd start petting her, you know. I'd fall back asleep. She'd wake me up. I'd pet her. So, like, you know, she really, you know, she was like reaching out to a degree. So we take her in to have her put down, and we do just that, you know, and it's a decent experience. You know, they're Wyoga Lake vets out there. They're good at what they do, and they made it painless for her and for me, you know, as painless as it could be. So your mom's already in the hospital by this point in time. And I come home and I'm getting ready to go see her. And it was the next day. It was the day after Kitty was put down. And I'm clipping my nails, and one of my fingernails hits the floor and bounces under the bed. And I had to sweep up a guy's fingernails at the fire department one time, and I was disgusted. So I don't leave nails on the floor. It's marked me. It's scarred me for life. So my fingernail bounces under the bed. I get my substandard flashlight on my iPhone, whatever it is, 10 out. There it is. I pick it up, put it in my palm. I stand up and I look at it, and it's not one of my fingernails. It's one of Kitty's fingernails. Okay, and it's like Kitty's little toenail. And I'm like, oh, Kitty, you know. And just after I thought, oh, Kitty, or might even said, oh, Kitty, right? Vision number 2 pops up. This time, it's like, okay, let's say this is all 360 degrees, right? Well, the vision takes part like in this 180 out here, okay? And from left to right, there's a guy standing over here. He's like dressed in old timey clothes, like biblical dress. Okay, he's like got some sort of a gown on, right? And then he's standing next to a little low hill, right? And that little low hill has these like tracks, cartwheel tracks, you know, like a cart's going up this hill a lot of times, right? And it goes up like 5-6 feet, and then it just disappears. There's like everything behind that is all just like a cloud of fog, you know, and it's all in this gray, you know. And so you come past that little hill, and oh, here's Kitty. Kitty is like right the fuck in front of me. Kitty is like floating in the, and not floating. She's like right there, and she looks like a, yeah, she looks like she wants to play. She looks like a kitty again, a kitten, you know. And I'm like, I told her, you know, when I had her in the backyard before the hot shot, I go, Kitty, you're going to go to a better place. You're not going to have any more pain. You're not going to have any more fear. You know, Mom and I are going to be along pretty soon. You're not going to be alone. You know, it's going to be okay. You know, I told her that the day before we had her put down, you know, and now by God, and I mean by God, she looks like she's ready to go play. And when I said, Kitty, you got to go be with God, you know. I said, don't you worry, Mom and I'll be coming pretty soon, you know. And Kitty kind of shrugs, you know, and she's like, all right then, you know. And she turns and she starts walking towards this guy. Now, I'm going to say, going out on a limb here because I got nothing to base this on other than the Bible, I suppose. But that guy was an angel. I'm going to say that. I think that guy was an angel. He didn't have any wings or anything like that, but he just stand there. And he stand there like this, and just kind of like looking back at Kitty. You know, I didn't look him in his face. I don't know what his face looked like. I have no idea. There's reasons probably that you're not supposed to do that, you know. But I could see what he was wearing, you know, and I could see his arms because his arms were just folded like this, like he had all the time in the world. And I got to tell you what, he does, okay? So, like, he's standing there, and, like, Kitty goes, yeah, cool, you know, I'll go. So she walks over by the guy, and the two of them start up that little hill, you know. And as they start up that hill, it just vanishes. Everything vanishes again. Now, the whole thing probably took, I don't know what, 30 seconds, something like that, if that. And I'm not going, what the fuck? Kitties go to heaven? You know, this is good news, you know, for one thing, you know. And I mean that from the heart because I've had some decent animals. But the next day, the same day, you know, that big angel Ma puts out at Christmas time? It's like
I think so.
2 feet tall, you know, and big old thing. Any Catholic girl worth her salt would love to have an angel like that. And we put a little crown of lights on it, you know, and we like it. So we leave it out. We usually leave it out past Christmas because we're in no hurry to take that thing down. And like I'm heading out the door because I'm pretty sure I'm going back up to see your mom. Matter of fact, I know I was going back up to see her at the Cleveland Clinic because she was still inpatient, you know. And as I'm walking through the family room, I kind of glance back at that angel, right? And I look, and the gown that the angel is wearing, right, looks exactly like the gown the guy had on in this vision, right? And I'm going, okay, you know, I guess I'm through erring on the side of caution here, you know. What this is telling me is that, hey, for what it's worth to you guys, you know, that there is a God. no two ways about it. There is a God, and Jesus Christ was sent to earth as the Son of God to die for our sins. And if you believe that, there'll be a life after this one. Now that's what they used to call. That's what the Jesus freaks back in the day used to call the good news. That's what they still call it, is the good news. And I mean, you can't just walk up to people and go, well, wait, maybe most people can't just walk up to people and go, I had a vision from God. It's like, but there's something about my demeanor. My delivery is such that I can work that into a conversation. And I think that may be part of his plan, right? He wants to get the word out there. And I mean, I don't know what percentage I tell that story to that believe me. I would say the majority of people I talk to appear to believe me.
They got there's this experiment that was done called the phantom DNA experiment. Well, they'll bombard DNA in a vacuum with photons, and the photons will start revolving around the DNA and they'll start like interfering with the DNA. They'll start to work together. When you remove the DNA from the vacuum, the photons stay there and continue to spin around the area where the DNA used to be for a while, for like 2 weeks. And I wonder if that's the spirit. That spirit is like the spirit of the cat, of Kitty, was still present. And so I wonder, like, when they say we're headed towards a bright light, I'm like, maybe that's the sun. Maybe God is the sun, this vibrating eminence, sending out all these frequencies could be the sun, could be the galactic core, but it's this ball of light. And when people's body die, the spirit has a choice. It can stay. Like if you've been like Kitty, don't go, stay with me. If you've been like afraid and didn't want to let go, she might be haunting you still. Her spirit may still be haunting. And I mean, so you were,
that's accurate, but I don't see why it wouldn't be.
You encourage it to go be with God. So it went and became one with this ball, this glory. And they say like lost souls, people that are in hell are people that are away from the light, and they've turned away from the light. So their soul doesn't go to the sun. It goes off into deep space, somewhere dark. And then these souls are out there and they can be brought back to the light.
Weren't you telling me that you were doing some drug and you saw some people that nobody else could see?
Yeah, DMT. It's fascinating because it correlates with what you're talking about. So were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, you told me that like you could see them and they realized that you were looking at them. Now that's what you told me. That's
yes. It was I vaped DMT. It was actual DMT crystals, and I didn't pull hard enough to blast off. They say you go into this realm. I hear a cat over there, by the way. I'd like to see
I'm trying to grab her.
Him or her. And what's this cat's name?
Say hi to the people. Oh, wait. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Hi, people.
What is his name?
This is Emma.
Oh, that's her name. Hello, Emma. Gorgeous.
They've been going outside. Your mama, their mama bought these cockamamie little leashes with vests that I have to strap them into, That's right. I'm walking cats.
Really? Do you put them on like a zip line so they can run back and forth?
We've got, I've given them each about, I don't know, probably 16 foot of rope, enough to hang themselves.
Yeah, as long as
watching them close. And they've been going off in line at your mom's flower gardens. They love it, chasing chipmunks, and nobody's caught anything yet. But Randy will bring himself up short on this, and if they get stuck, it's got elastic in the clips, so it can pull right off them. Brandy's pulled out his at least a half a dozen times.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I knew a cat that got caught up in a blind string and had to get its arm amputated because
your mom had us put a collar on a cat one time and had it. Well, we'll just keep it on the back porch. Well, until it fell off the back porch, and it was like what I found.
Oh,
no, its toes were still on the ground. Happy ending. Same thing like when that one cat of ours jumped into the dryer when Mom was doing laundry.
Oh,
I can't remember which cat it was, but
you get it out in time.
Huh?
You get them out in time? I don't remember.
Yeah. That's why I'm laughing. She said she started up the stairs and she heard this babok, and she said, "Oh, there's nothing in there that should be baboking," And she opened it up, and I think it was Ernie. Ernie came flying out of the dryer. So now.
Ernie, I think it was my first cat. Ernie and Annie were those two cats. Okay, wait. Let me finish the story because we're in the middle of talking about this DMT experience. This DMT experience was wild because I went into a stereoscopic realm, like you said, of 360-degree reality. It was like a high frequency. I was in like this vast chamber of infinity. It wasn't like I was in a room, but at the same time, it went on forever. And
that's drugs for you.
I was laying in the bed. I was like sitting in the bed, and when I would lay on the left side of my head, because I was still conscious, I hadn't blasted into this room. I was like aware that I was seeing it, but I was also aware that I was in a bed. So it was just two-way. And when I would lay my head on my left side, the left part of the stereoscopic realm disappeared. It became blackness. There was nothing there. And when I would compress the right side of my head, the right part of the stereoscopic vision disappeared. So I was like, okay, has something to do with blood flow in my brain if I can perceive this properly. And then these high frequency, I started to see like shapes and patterns, like alphanumeric shapes and patterns, like an A on its side or like a 4 with like a diagonal. They didn't look like English necessarily. Every once in a while I'd see something familiar, and there are these streaming like strands of alphanumeric patterns, like streaming, like moving. And then they were like ribbons, and then they were like shimmering all the colors of the rainbow into this white kind of light. And then they took on the outline of this woman's arm, and it was like flowing. Her body was like flowing, the border of her body was flowing, and it looked kind of like mom, like only it didn't look like a human. It just had the long dark hair of like my mother. So there was this familiarity energy of like the mother energy. And then two other, I started to all of a sudden realize there were two other masculine dudes, personas. They had personality standing. One was smaller than her, and then one was very small in the middle. But I realized later it was because he was further away, and then the guy in the middle was much further away, so he seemed small. But in that realm, distance is imperceivable. It's hard to perceive. What would you call that? Distance, like when you're seeing distance. It's hard to see that in that realm. So I had to like reverse engineer that, understanding that they were standing in different areas of the room. And they were like, holy, one of the guys, it was as if I teleported onto a ship into their teleporting chamber. And the guy was like, fucking, he can see us. And they were just looking at me like, what the fuck, he can see. And they were so happy. And I knew when I went into that realm, I had a choice. I was like, okay, I can be afraid coming in here, or it's not a realm. It's a different way of perceiving what is happening right now. You're seeing a higher frequency. It seems like a high frequency,
a different dimension.
It is the term dimension gets thrown around in science, and I don't know if a scientist would qualify this as literally it's a different frequency.
Interdimensional to me, but then what do I know?
Right, because it was arguably the fifth dimension. Like maybe there's no time, because you said like this guy has all the time in the world. It did feel when I was there that time stopped, or it was moving so slow that it was imperceivable to my human brain, and it felt like this is this is where our souls come from and to. And it felt like, we're good. If this is it, dude, which it is, I think it is, we're good. Death is okay. You're okay. You're going to be fine. You're probably going to want to come back to Earth. I was saying this last night, like I was eating and I was so delicious. I was like, this is why I come to Earth, is to enjoy the flavor of food. These things that you get to enjoy, where you're sitting in the spirit realm and you're like, I want to feel what it has to have sex. I want to love a child. I want to taste that food again. Yeah, it's going to hurt. I don't know if you get to pick your body, or if it's just like, I'm just going to roll the dice and see where I grow up this time. Or because having been born in affluence like I was, and like America in the 20th century with running water and warmth, and I didn't have to go to war. I didn't see anybody die. It was just beautiful, awesome, amazing reality. And that's like an anomaly in the history of humanity. Like, why now? Why would I choose this body in this time now? If not, I don't know, to spread the word of God. I don't know what it is exactly. But so the why, and it's almost like maybe why falls apart when you're talking about the spirit realm. There's no why. There doesn't have to be a why. That's a human concept.
Why. That's the thing. You're telling me about all this stuff about the DMT and the, I had another guy. Well, it's a long story. I won't devolve into that. But, it's like after what happened to me, I mean, another realm, that you might accidentally stumble into when you were high on a certain chemical, that to me, that's just like, that could easily, I mean, that probably makes me sound like a crackpot, but I'm just like, when I just, saw my cat go to heaven, it's like, I'm buying pretty much anything, not everything. I still don't believe Trump won in 2020, but that's a joke. Although I don't believe that he won in 2020. Where were you?
In the spirit realm?
Anyway, no, I didn't want to know where you were in the spirit room. Tell me something I don't know. Tell me how your mother used to say that. Remember what she used to say? That we'd sit down at dinner and we'd all go talk about living the middle class dreams. Like, tell us something good that happened to you at school today, because like you guys come in and belly aching all the time. This guy did this and this guy did this. So your mom came up with that rule where you're going to have to First, you had to tell us something good that happened to you that day. Tell me something good that's happened to you today. By the way,
realized that fear is the enemy. So when I go into this realm, I digressed a little bit. When I go into the realm, when I start to see reality from this perspective, I realize how I see it is going to determine what it is. So it's like, do you want to look at the X from the side and just see a straight line, or do you want to look at it from the front and see an X? You get to pick when you go into this perception. And I knew if I went in there afraid, I was suspecting if I go in there afraid, they're going to become terrifying. They're going to become demonic. But if I'm in there in love, they're going to be angels and angelic. And they were. There was no control study for the study.
Actually, that consciously crossed your mind before you went into this room?
Before I went in, I chose love, and they were very gracious. They were very appreciative that I chose love. And as it was ending, the vision was fading away because the DMT was wearing off. I was sad because it was going away. I wanted to go back. And I got to pick, do I want to be sad about losing this? Or do I want to just appreciate what happened? And I chose, you know what? Thank you for this opportunity. And this woman appeared and said, thank you for like the graciousness of the spirits, that I was just happy to have had experienced it and not sad for losing it. Was like, that's a big deal for them. And it first had it happen to me at Burning Man, where I took psilocybin for like 7 days straight, and it was meditating in the desert. And all these musics at Burning Man, all these different, there's like 60,000 camps in the desert. They set up this city, and 40,000 different songs playing at once, all vibrating and making this mega sound that then the psilocybin is another, whether it's a hallucination or whatever. But I was like, speak to me, demon. Like I was commanding this demon to speak to me. I don't even know what the demon was, but it just, this voice came at me of like, first I heard this frequency, and it was like, it's like this sound of frequency, this like, and it wasn't my breathing. I was slowing my breathing. The frequency would go up. So it was like a frequency that, the energy frequency, I couldn't control it. So I started to command this demon. I thought it was a demon possessing me. So I commanded it to speak, and it did. And it was terrifying, this voice. And I realized at that point, this was like in 2007, I have a choice. I can trust myself and everything I've learned and everything I believe and love this thing. Just accept this demon, or I can be afraid. And I was like, I'm going to choose to love this thing. And so I listened to this demon, and it spoke this way. And I was like, it went on for like probably a minute, 2 minutes. And I was like, I think I'm one of those guys that destroyed myself with psilocybin, I think, but I loved it. I listened to it. And then it took on a conversational tone, this demon, whatever it was. And it was like, and then it dissipated and thanked me for listening and not being afraid, and disappeared. And I realized it's fear that is the enemy. And I know nothing to fear but fear itself. It's like an ancient platitude from one of our presidents. Was it
that would have been Roosevelt, I believe.
Roosevelt, nothing to fear but fear itself. And obviously there are situations where you don't want to walk in front. I'm not saying that you acknowledge danger, but you don't necessarily have to be afraid of it. You do have some control over the chemicals that you squirt in your gut, the cortisol, the fear chemicals, and that's very important when you're traveling in the spirit realm.
I don't know how to respond to that.
You want to control your chemicals in your gut, because I think those cortisol can make the spirit realm very scary. So like cleansing your gut and having an empty body when you're in there.
You're all about the brain. I got a brain story. How much more time we got here?
I mean, we have all the time in the world, my brother. But we should tell me the story, and then we'll wrap it up. What's this?
That sounds good.
I had a few comments I wanted to read too. Yeah, Matt, okay. This is Ian's dad. Here, check it out. People have been commenting. Matt asked if this was if we're related. I don't own him or anything. He's not mine.
No, I'm yours.
We belong to each other. All right, what's this other one?
You complete me.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Thanks, T-Bone. Okay, what's this other thing?
Oh, the other thing. Okay. All right. So your mom and I are watching 60 Minutes one evening, and they're doing a story about I hope I have my story straight here. It was a story about people who had been given the Carnegie Medal, and it's my understanding that the Carnegie Medal by Andrew Carnegie is like this medal, gold-plated or whatever, gold medal, that's given out to a group of people annually for having put their own personal lives at risk in an attempt to save a person who was in danger, like house fires, that kind of stuff, car wrecks and whatever. And these are people that kind of like literally ran towards danger. Okay. So they started kind of seeing that, or somebody postulated that these Carnegie Award winners had a lot of things in common, you know, and they couldn't quite put their finger on it. So I believe it's is it the adrenal gland that is for fight or flight? I believe it's the adrenal. Anyway, that's it. That's it. It was the adrenal gland. They did testing, MRIs of these people's brains. They got a handful of these Carnegie Award winners, and it's the amygdala. The amygdala. I'm sorry, it was the amygdala. That's the center that they're talking about. And they found out that all these people that have won this award, they had amygdalas that were like slightly larger than average. Okay, and like they were kind of like figuring that the bigger your amygdala was, the more you were programmed to run towards danger. And they had a story about a lady, I think, that ran into a house to try to save somebody in a house fire. She was one of the award winners, you know. And I turned to your mother, you know, and I said, well, I've done that. And your mom said, you're my hero, you know. So I get to thinking, you know what, I've had these jobs, like I worked in the psych hospital for like 5 years, you know, and that was like, you know, I mean, that was like kind of crazy sometimes, you know. And I mean, you know, I knew an axe murderer, for God's sake, you know, and then you know, I mean, I was a firefighter for 28 years, you know, and like when stuff happens, you know, like I mean, like I didn't know if I'd be a good fireman or not, honestly, you know, and it just, you know, I got lucky because I was, and I loved that job, you know, but like I was thinking how like there was a car wreck out front of the house 2 years ago, and I do not run anymore. Okay, I do not run. I really have pretty much convinced myself I can't run. Well, there was a car wreck with 3 ladies in this van that got T-boned, you know, and I mean, I didn't think about it. I just zoomed towards that car. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you didn't have any trouble running today, old timer. You know, but it's like, you know, because like probably, you know, your adrenaline kicks in or whatever, and we were up in, your mom and I were up in West Yellowstone, I think it is. It's a city right outside of Yellowstone Park. I think it's West Yellowstone. We were walking around there one day and kind of had ourselves half lost. And we were going back to this campground we were staying at. And the guy was sanding floors. I'm assuming because you could hear a sander running in the house. And these 2 fucking Rottweilers come screaming out the front door of this house, right? And they head right towards your mother, right? I mean, these things, these snarling, fucking, you know, fucking spittle flying everywhere and shit, you know. And as soon as I saw them, right, I placed myself directly, you know, in between those dogs and your mother, you know. And I went all like alpha male on them, you know. I was like, back off, like that, you know. And it kind of stunned them, you know, and they backed up for a second, you know. And then the guy came to the door, you know, and he said, hey, you two get back in here. And they went running back inside the house, right? But it became apparent to your mother that I was fucking willing to take a bullet for her, you know, and that just, you know, it was like there was no conscious thought involved, you know. It's because of this fucking amygdala, you know, that I've been cursed with, you know, and it's just like, anyway. I think I got it. Okay, I think I got the big amygdala. And one more little anecdote. I was walking down. I was at the beach, and I was pushing a beach cart one day, and I was like, and I had this electric shock go through my arms, you know, and up my neck and shit. And I was like, what the fuck, you know? And I thought, what is this, a stroke, you know? And I didn't say anything to anybody, you know. We get over there and put our blankets down. Your mom's going, let's go in the water, you know. I go, yeah, in a minute, because I was thinking, if I'm gonna have a stroke, I want to have it on dry land, right? So I get all these tests done, do all this testing and stuff, and they finally figure out. You know, I had a ruptured disc in my lumbar spine several years ago. I had surgery to fix it, and I read at that time that people that have that are prone to also have them in their neck. Well, I had been playing that fucking Oculus, killing all kinds of rogue robots, you know, doing this and this and this, you know. And this is probably about the tender age. What was I then? Maybe 73 or something. And I'm stretching, I'm pulling, I'm killing and killing and killing. There's that robot blood everywhere, you know. And it's like I must have torqued a disc in my neck, right? So when my good friend, Dr. Douglas Erler, the funniest orthopedic surgeon I ever met, right, who did my lower back, he's looking at he's diagnosing me, he's telling me what's wrong with me, you know, my neck. And he's like, you know, he says, that's, you know, you're at no greater risk than any of the rest of the population as far as neck injury is concerned. It's not like, you know, you're going to blah, blah, blah. And he goes, you know, it's just, and you're really going to be fine. And I go, Doc, let me, well, we're looking at this MRI of my brain. I said, let me let me just ask you. I quickly told him the story about the Carnegie Award and the winners, you know, and the fact that they had big amygdalas. And I said, doctor, I said, do you see my amygdala on that X-ray, you know? And he goes, well, yes, I do, you know. And we both walk over to it, and he points at this one little, and he brushes it away, and he goes, oh, no, he says that wasn't your amygdala. That was a speck of dust, you know. Meaning he couldn't even see my fucking amygdala. Okay, don't you get it?
Oh, it's that small.
Well, you got to explain a little anecdote like that. When you're expecting belly laughs, it's not the same. It really
Could he,
isn't.
yeah, I don't laugh much anymore. No, I'm just kidding about that. That's my kind of joke. Wait, was he being literal? He couldn't see your amygdala is that small? I don't know a lot about it. I know that's the lizard brain. That's what they call the lizard brain.
Ian, why did the chicken cross the road?
I still haven't figured it out.
Come on now, send it. Don't
so
play
many,
court.
So
don't play.
many
You know,
reasons.
I hear that so often. All right, now you just wait. Young man.
Here,
no wait. Okay, here's how we're gonna do this little thing. Okay, I'm gonna say, Ian, why the chicken crossed the road, and you're gonna give me the time on it, answer to enter, and you know, now I'm having.
It's because he had to take a piss as much as I do right now. Probably he's like, I gotta go. I gotta get myself to a toilet. He was probably thinking
nothing but trouble.
That's me. I'm the guy that actually was thinking that just now.
Okay, you remember a teenage girl I asked that question of one day. I said, why the chicken cross the road? And she said to get to the idiot's house. Yeah. And I said, we're talking about me here, right?
Compelled speech. Like if you try to make me say something, you'll have a hard time trying to make me say it.
Okay, maybe that's not the best joke for you. Let me tell you this. I was telling it to a 9-year-old who was much more cooperative than you are, I might add. Okay, wait, but there's more, you know. And I told her the joke. We all had our belly laugh. You know, we were like, oh,
that's Michael Hood. I'm digging it.
You know, here's and then grandma says to her, she's 9, right? She's 9. She's charming. She goes, 9-year-olds, they're cool, you know. They're just starting to come into their own being, you know. And grandma says, why don't you tell him your joke? You know, and she went, oh, okay. And she goes, why did the monkey fall out of the tree? And I said, I don't know. And she said, it was dead. And when she said that, I started like, I mean, if I could do what I'm doing now, you know. And I was telling her, I was going like, I said like, oh, you know, that is dark. That is awful dark. I said, but I did LOL. So I said, it's got to go down in the books as a winner, you know.
Who was it that said that?
Huh?
Who was it that said that? I'm trying to.
A 9-year-old.
Oh, that's a good one.
The kid I was put a cast on one day.
My thoughts on the amygdala is that not only does an enlarged amygdala apparently nudge people towards bravery or overriding their fear factor.
Wait, are you just making this up as you go along? Or you
based on what you're saying
extemporaneous, or you're
no? This is more like logic following what you're saying about an enlarged amygdala.
Please, I want to hear what you have to say.
Amygdala apparently overrides the fear factor or helps you override the fear factor. Maybe control of your amygdala. A larger one gives better bravery, but that doing brave things and overriding your fear causes your amygdala to grow. So it might be that both are connected. That you can. I don't know. I'm just wondering, maybe it's a trainable and it's like a muscle, you know, it's stronger muscle can lift more weight, but also lifting more weight makes the muscle stronger.
I never felt particularly brave overall, you know. I mean, I wouldn't call myself, I didn't want to go into combat, you know. I didn't want to die in some godforsaken mud hole, you know. But when I was in the Navy for 4 long years, right? Here's a less shining moment, right? I can swim. I'm not a great swimmer. I can swim. I had seen the captain of the ship almost drowned. We had some damage to our propeller, and him and the engineering officer were going to go over the side while we were at a dead stop in the middle of the ocean. And they were going to look at the screw to see if we could make it back or if we'd have to be towed. They go over, they check. It's fine. Okay. So I believe the engineering officer was sent up by the captain first, right? And then the captain starts coming up a rope ladder. He's got scuba gear on and he's coming up a rope ladder. And the guy's probably in his 40s, mid 40s. And the ship gets in the trough and it starts to rock like this, okay? It's rocking. It rocks out like this, he gets sucked in. Where it rocks back like this, he gets pushed out, right? This happens like maybe half a dozen times, and the whole crew is standing there looking over the side of the ship, watching the captain about to drown, you know. And like finally, he gets a hand on that rope ladder. There wasn't anything anybody could do. He was in the trough, man. He was in the motherfucking trough, you know. We're all in the trough, baby. Anyway, he was in the trough, and like he finally makes it up. And there's a picture of him in the magazine. We were on a cruise called Unitas. It was a goodwill tour to South America that the Navy used to do every year. And there's a picture of him sitting on a ballast, right after he had come up out of the water. And man, he looked beat to shit. Okay. All right. So we're on the same cruise, right? And we're like cruising around the way we do, right? And we're operating with some different navies and stuff, like South American navies. And my ship was a destroyer escort. It was supposed to kill submarines with torpedoes, right? And it was fast and maneuverable and that sort of thing. And we're out and we're working with some sub, and they're supposed to shoot just X amount of degrees off that sub's stern, and that'll count as a hit, right? And so they're doing this, and they're using these. Back in those days, they were using these dummy torpedoes that weren't going to explode, and after they used up all their fuel, they'd float to the top, and they were like $10,000 a piece, right? So we had to go throw a grappling hook on this thing and get it, right? So we get out there, and we're on the forecastle. We're on the front part of the ship, me and the rest of my cohorts, and my chief, who's in charge, right? He was a Satanist from San Francisco. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, that guy, we get close to this torpedo, we can't get a line on it, because every time we get close to it, it'd be pushed away, And so finally, he turns to me and he says, "Crossland, take a line, get over the side, swim out to that torpedo, lash her down, and we'll haul you back in." And like the only thing I could think of was the fucking captain of the ship, right? Almost going to the bottom of Davy Jones' locker one day, right? Because that Mother Nature, right? And that's all I could see was myself being sucked under the. And I said to the chief, "Now you're not supposed to say this when they give you an order like that, You're supposed to say, 'Aye, aye, sir,' which means I heard the order, I understood the order, and I will do everything to complete the order." That's what I means, right? So like I said, instead of saying aye, sir, I said, "Gee, Chief, do you really think that's a good idea?" This guy had been in the Navy like 20 some years, He like, Jesus Christ, He rips his shirt off, right? He fucking kicks his leather shoes off, right? He does a fucking swan dive off the bow, right? And he powers through the goddamn water with the rope in his teeth, He looked like Johnny Weissmuller from the old Tarzan movie, swimming out to get that torpedo. I was personally concerned for the torpedo when I saw him heading that direction, the torpedo lost, right? He gets it out there and he taps him on the head. We haul him back in, and I thought to myself, you know what? If I would have known it was going to be that fucking easy, I would have done it,
You did not say that to the chief, though, that part.
No,
I
didn't. I just thought to myself, you know what? I am too young and too handsome to die.
This Satanistic San Franciscan chief sounds like a badass.
He was just another guy, doing a job. He was all right. He was okay.
Empowered by Satan. I don't know if I believe in the
whole. Yeah. I always thought that was, that's the thing. He was out there in San Francisco with the Navy, right? And like, there was it was called the Church of. This is like 1960s stuff. It was called the Church of Satan, okay? And it was like run by or invented by a guy by the name of Antoine LaVey, okay? So Antoine was the Church of Satan, right? And it being San Francisco, naturally, they had a lot of people that decided, oh, that's a good idea. Because, there's a lot of free thought going out there in San Francisco, which I highly approve of, I really do. I was thinking about Mario Savio, at the back when at the beginning of the free speech movement. I think it was in '64, standing at Sawther Gate, and he was saying, sometimes when the wheels of the machine, become so odious, the long drive. He had this great, powerful speech. It's online. Mario Savio, his name. He was one of the leaders of the free speech movement, circa 1964.
I agree with you about letting bad ideas flourish, because that's the only way you can find them and change and like apply a better idea. Like, I don't think the way to combat the free speech movement or the crazy ideas of the wild liberal West are to shut them down. I think you got to let the ideas come together, and the best ideas will be obvious. But then there's the whole like astroturfing ideas by using algorithms and the media to promote certain concepts that might be deleterious to, the morality of our nation or our world, where you're like, okay, free speech. Yeah. How far are you going to take it? Like showing someone child porn. It's not just free speech to promote, to show. Anyway, that's a whole other fucking 3-hour We could probably debate with a big crowd for that. That'd be good.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah, it has been. Tim Crossland, thanks for coming, man. Thanks for sitting down. Hey, when you do your show, let me be your first guest.
Or, you know what?
Let me be on it.
I'll have to look at the schedule. I can't make any promises at this point in time, because, well, for one thing, the show is non-existent. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot tougher to nail down some of those dates. There's an actual show.
Do you have anywhere people can go find your work or anything as of this point?
Ian, up until this moment, up until this afternoon, I really have treasured my anonymity. I don't really have much interest in putting my shit out there. You know what I'm saying? I kind of like the fact that nobody knows who I am. A man of mystery, you might say.
I think of it as like it's kind of a personal sacrifice to become well known. Like fame without money is definitely a weight. I mean, fame with money. Even Bill Murray's like, well, you're trying to be rich and famous. Just try being rich. You had a YouTube channel. I haven't been able to locate it. The Cosmo.
Yeah, it's still out there somewhere. It was like, I just really, if I was going to do anything, I'd probably end up, I got these. Obviously, I've got this anecdote overload. I've got a wealth of stories that I said to Michael one day. Michael, your brother, I said, I'm not going to write these down. These things are just, they're going to die with me. And Michael said, well, you ought to tell like one of your stories, and I could, I could like record it, and well, okay, all right, that's a good idea. So he was over for dinner one Sunday afternoon, and I told an anecdote, and he recorded it, and we both laughed heartily because it was, one of my amazing anecdotes, one of many. At any rate, we played it back and we both laughed. And then the next Sunday he came over and I said, okay, let's do another episode. And he went, no, I'm through doing that. And I went, what? He goes, yeah, no, I'm done. He effectively resigned as my producer.
You'll probably need to pay him for that.
I don't think I would, I think I could. I think if I worked hard enough on it, I'd play the family angle, and that sort of thing. And
just guilt him into doing it for free.
Yeah, that would be like step one, Yeah. And then if I had to, I'd seek counsel,
All right, Tim, thanks again for coming, man. My father, my friend, good dude. Thanks for helping me figure out the first 20, 30, 40 years of my life so far. It's been good.
Why did the chicken cross the road? Do it. Fucking do it. Ian, why did the chicken...
get to the other side?
Stop.
My cultural nightmare. I'm going to just say...
one more chance, mister.
You want my programmer or do you want my actual answer? I don't understand. I know my voice just got shrill.
Here's how we're going to... No way. You know what? You were killing this joke. You were strangling this joke. Here's how we're going to do this, okay? Wise guy, okay? Here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to say to you, Ian, why did the chicken cross the road? And you're going to say to me, to get to the other side. Okay.
Let's
you got it. You got your line.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm ready. Okay.
All right, here we go. You ready? Oh, your mother just called from the other room saying you're desperate. That's the thing. You know what? I'll tell this joke, and it'll kill, and she'll go, why do you tell that stupid joke, and I'll be like, that joke kills, Okay, but I digress. Yet again. All right, so let me hold on. Hold on. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Ian.
Yes.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
To get to the other side.
No. The chicken crossed the road to get to your house. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
The chicken.
Oh shit. That was pretty good.
Yeah, it's a fucking amazing joke. Not to mention the monkey falling out of the tree.
Apparently, that one's stuck with me for years. Larry David was notoriously on the set of Seinfeld. He wouldn't laugh, but he knew when something was funny.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. And that joke's like that.
That's a good one.
A lot of it has to do with the delivery. It's like, it's key. I also make sure that I always work the person's first name into it. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
To disarm them, yeah.
Ian, pause, pregnant pause. Ian. Why did you see what I'm saying? It's timing's everything. Okay, listen, this has been great. Thanks for everything.
All right, man. Let's do it again. Canine Striker, Dad. Wasn't that a fire? He was. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Tim Crossland in the house. As always, a pleasure, my man. We'll talk soon. Have a nice day. Oh, and follow me everywhere. Bye.
Bye.